What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, let me know what you've been playing.
Yeah, so not too much new. Still dabbling in some of the stuff I've talked about before. Persona 5, Scramble. I didn't really get to play since last time. But I did check out on your recommendation Dirt 5. That was on Game Pass, and loved it. I actually really like that game. It's super, just quick arcadey nonsense. The soundtracks are pretty, good, and so it's a nice sort of vibing kind of deal when I'm just kind of zoning out for like an hour and I just want to do a couple of races. It's fun. Looks great on Series X. Really sharp and fun looking game, and it saddens me because now this company is purchased by EA, from my understanding. If I remember correctly, they
Codemasters,
they own like every racing company now. But it's a fun game, so hopefully they keep going with it and stuff like that. Like I was even tempted to. It was on a sale on PS5, and I was like, I'm kind of tempted to get it there so I own it, not just Game Pass. But I didn't pull the trigger on it just yet. I still have all the original content in there to still play before the DLCs and stuff like that. So. Fun game. I really like it, and I'm usually not into just like these more static racing games like that, but this one's just really good, really fun, really fun. So I was surprised. So you definitely good call on that one, and it looks great to have. That's pretty much the first quote unquote next gen racing game we've had. So I'm fun. I'm glad it's at least a good one, since there was no Need for Speed this year, or maybe there is one. Who knows? So yeah, just been playing. Yeah. So I just been playing that, and then I've just been preparing for some of these PS5 updates that are coming. I started kind of just refreshing my memory on Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake, because the PS5 version is coming, or the update is coming. I'm confused if I have to pay for the update or not. It's like a weird nonsense. I own the game digitally, so I don't know exactly where that lands with me in them, so I don't think I'm going to pay for the update because the game runs pretty smoothly as it is. But I have just jumped in there. That game's still obviously amazing. The soundtrack's just perfect. We've talked about it when the game came out. That game is so fun. Absolutely love it. And so that's also kind of been my. If I'm not in the mood for dirt, I'll just do that. Free skate. Sometimes I'll do the combo challenges and all those fun stuff. And so I also just lightly dabbled, and it kind of connects to today's news. A little bit back into Avengers, Marvel's Avengers, which I still have this love-hate relationship where for a while I'll be feeling good while I'm playing, and I'm like, okay, yeah, some bugs are fixed and things like that are great, and I'm like, I do want to get to a certain point because the update is out for the PS5 version. It's a little tricky to, I don't know, people made it seem like it's a lot harder than it is to upgrade your like file and stuff, because it's not like Xbox where you can kind of just go for it.
Yeah.
This one you have to download the other version, upload a save, and bring it down and do this whole thing. But the trophies are connected, so I want to get a few more trophies. That way when I do switch to the PS5, all the trophies just pop automatically, and then I can go from there. And I doubt I'm going to hit the platinum because that game's super grindy. That game's like 100-something hours to get the platinum. Yeah. So I'm not really going for that. I just want a solid base before I go and play these DLCs. And so yeah, that game is just still weird. It's just still such a weird mishmash, and I've talked about it a little bit ago when I played it again for the first time since launch, and it's still there where it's just like some of these characters are just done so well, other characters are just done without some of that love and passion that I know Square and these guys should have for this. So it's just still disappointing, and it's just still all over the place. And now we have other characters coming. Their whole timeline is completely off. We should have been having Spider-Man by now, and who knows what's even happening with that. It'll probably be canceled. It's weird. They said it's not going free to play anytime soon, so not to expect that. So that's all I've been playing, just kind of refreshing myself with these games. Some really good, and then Avengers is just there. It's it feels like when I play Avengers, it feels like if I went back to Anthem, this is what I would feel like. Where I'm like, the gameplay's solid, but there's nothing to do. It's like the characters are cool, but there's no costumes to get and stuff. So it makes me sad, but it is what it is. And that's all I've been playing, besides a few fighting games and stuff like that. Still playing Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which got better, but it suffers from everything that most Dragon Ball games, where the level will spike all of a sudden, and they want you to go grind or to go do some random battles, which is annoying because you're doing good, you're hitting all the cutscenes really quick, and then I'm at the Ginyu Force scene, and so one Ginyu Force guy will just be super difficult for no reason, and so I put that down pretty quickly. But I will get back to it. I just didn't feel like grinding and fighting a bunch of nonsensical enemies. But it's there. I've just been kind of dabbling in it. I'm still sort of cleaning off that backlog, since nothing's releasing till May pretty much for me. But that's all I've been playing. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so it's been tricky for me too because I'm also waiting till May, so I've kind of just been going through my backlog and trying to find things, and nothing's like really hitting. And then I finally decided randomly, I don't know why, but I was like, you know what, I want to try ESO again. And I've been playing the hell out of ESO. I don't know why, but it's just hitting right this time. I don't think it's like the greatest thing in the world, but it is kind of just fun to be able to run around like this Elder Scrolls world and just screw around and do a bunch of quests. And I'm skipping through like every dialogue sequence, so I don't know what the hell's going on. But there's not like a linear. I mean, I think there is kind of a linear story, but it doesn't matter to me that much. I just value like the exploration and just leveling up my character slowly. So I've been having a lot of fun for that, and I put probably in the last week close to 8 to 10 hours or something like that. It's been quite a bit that I put into it for a week. For me, for a game of this style. Luckily, you can play a vast majority of it, or like everything I bumped into is fine. It's free. You don't have to put no money into it or anything like that. They have in-game currency mechanisms that you can put real money if you want to, but from what I've checked, it's mostly cosmetic. I know you do have to pay for like substantial upgrades to like unlock more story and I guess map portions and stuff like that. But for the most part, the world is massive. You get, I mean, it seems like near unlimited missions. I'm seeing them all over the place. I would imagine, somebody who's played for much longer than me would disagree with that, obviously. But for me, I mean, there's missions pinging all over the place. It's almost overwhelming because you can't play this like a traditional Skyrim game or a Ubisoft type game where you could just kind of checklist everything. Like they never stop pinging. So I'm like, okay, this is endless. So I just have to kind of focus on the progression of my character. And she looks terrible, so I'm trying to figure out ways to find the aesthetics better. So that's kind of the way I've been playing it. And I've been playing that on Xbox since that's on Game Pass with all these Bethesda games. So that's been a lifesaver. Between this EA Play thing and all these Bethesda games coming there, like Game Pass has been in really, really, really good shape. I've been really impressed with their offerings lately. I'm curious to see what the overturn is like for those two services. So obviously Bethesda has a deal with Xbox, so you would imagine that's going to stick there indefinitely. This EA thing is what I'm curious about because they're just having that deal is really good for them, for Xbox specifically. And having all those sports games, and I mean, they have a really healthy mix of different genres because EA has such a diverse, amount of teams. I'm curious to see how long that lasts with Xbox, and is this something that's indefinite? Is this something that they have like maybe like a fixed 2 years on? So I have my eye on that because I'm curious to see if Xbox has something in the tuck. So like maybe if EA goes away, then they form the deal with, I don't know, like Ubisoft or something like that. Uplay. And they're going to sub that one in, so they're always keeping that price proposition up. But yeah, no, I'm really having a good time with that. And yeah, ESO, you should hop on there. Let's run around and do nothing and kill dragons.
I mean, absolutely, why not? And it's funny, I looked at it when they dropped all the Elder Scrolls games. I did download Oblivion and Skyrim again, just because. And I looked at ESO and I was like, I tried this once years ago before it was like revamped and people really liked it.
Oh, it wasn't that great back then.
Yeah, so I'm like, I think it's. I'm like, what's the harm? I'm like, why not try? There's no subscription fee like Final Fantasy 14, so there's no monthly fee or anything. So I'm like, I should do it, and I'm gonna try to get my wife into it because I could download it on Xbox Series and then play it, and she has the Xbox One in her bedroom, so we can try to get a little clan rolling in there. We'll see how we do this.
Yeah, it's like good Fallout 76.
Yeah, I mean you can play that too. That's on.
No thanks.
Yeah. So, yeah, good stuff. It's I'm kind of glad there's a slight dry spell. I as much as I would have liked like one big game in maybe February or March to kind of continue us on, but at least it gives us time to really try out these other games.
Yeah, definitely.
On these other platforms. So yeah, let's get into the stories. The first one, Square had their conference, the first conference in a while where they kind of just like showed a lot. And we're going to go over the highlights. They announced a lot of things. A few things that we've already knew about, or sometimes they just show trailers. So we're just kind of going a little bit more over the bigger titles that come to us, and actually we have some thoughts about. And the first one is something that I went from not caring about to actually looking forward to this. So a while ago at a PS5 conference, they showed off Project Athia, and we didn't really see anything. It looked like a big tech demo, if I remember correctly. There was like a hooded person running through mountains, I think is all we had seen at the time. And so now we have way more, not too much more information, but it is officially now called for Spoken. Releasing in 2022. They have the protagonist, Frey, right? Frey Holland, who's being played by the actress Ella Balinska, which the only thing I know her from is the Charlie's Angels reboot with I think Elizabeth Banks produced that one. So it's looking interesting. It's looking almost like a fast-paced, like the traversing reminded me so much in the world. It reminded me almost of like Final Fantasy 15 in a sense, the way you went from like straight desert to the forest and stuff like that. But the magical and fantasy aspect of it that we finally got to see, like her hiding and running around from that dragon that's kind of walking around and everything like that, it looks like a really fun adventure game. I thought, I was kind of eerie on it. But, I mean, I enjoy Gary Whitta as a writer, so he is the one who's writing it. So I think the game has a lot of potential. It's looking good. I mean, they showed us such a small clip, and I got hyped for it, so I can only hope that, it's 2022, so we probably won't hear about it for the rest of the year until almost launch time next year. But I think that's kind of okay. I don't need this game. Like, I saw a little bit. I would like another gameplay or those PlayStation deep dives sort of that they do before a game launches, and that's it. I don't want, and I know it's a lot to ask about for Square, but I don't want this game to be like at every person's conference. I don't want this. So did you have any thoughts on Forspoken?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it looked really, really good. The gameplay is probably what latched me to the most, just seeing that kind of traversal. It looked really smooth, high performance, high polish. So yeah, I'm not mad at it at all. We'll see whether this is something I'm super interested in once it gets a little bit closer. Once I see what they're really, really going for there. But so far, it's a thumbs up from me from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and and it's officially, unless they break news later, it is just a PS5 game. I mean, I know it's coming to Microsoft Windows, but I mean, it's not like PS5, PS4, or across gen. I'm starting to I'm glad we're getting proper next gen every time I see just PS5 on there. So it's exciting, and we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. Avengers is getting a nice little update. I know this is your favorite game of 2020. Yikes. I know you loved Marvel's Avengers.
Yikes.
So they're still doubling down on this. Hawkeye, which was supposed to be out by now, that update is coming out soon. It looks weird. He doesn't look like most versions of Hawkeye. I've seen a lot of versions of Hawkeye, and this one looks like the worst version of any of them. This all coincided with the next-gen upgrade that we discussed. I've not tried the next-gen upgrade. From what I've seen, most people are just saying that it's just load times that was fixed. Nothing else was really fixed. But they do have a big Black Panther expansion that we knew about. For some reason they acted like we didn't know about this, but that's coming out at a future time, so it wasn't anytime soon. This also comes with all those grindy level changes and stuff like that. So I don't really have much more to say. This looks fine. I don't know when I will bite the bullet and just play some of this content. Some of this content is free. I think the Black Panther content will be paid. I missed that segment. I know the Hawkeye stuff and the Kate Bishop stuff was free, technically. So it's there. I'm not gonna even ask. Are you gonna jump into Marvel's Avengers?
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
I'm not touching this game. But I mean, have fun. I'm happy for those who are who are still playing this and getting new characters. I'm glad that they're still supporting it, but I have no interest in playing this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad they at least brought... I think Black Panther should have been in the game from the beginning, but...
Yeah.
It is what it is. Life is Strange is back. So the third Life is Strange game, Life is Strange True Colors, will be releasing, I believe, this September, or if I remember. So they announced the new Life is Strange True Colors. It is not being made by Don't Nod, who made the first two and then also made Tell Me Why.
Yeah.
So interesting. It does look like they're using the same engine. I like some of the themes they're playing with. Some people were trying to get a lot of hate on it. I don't know why, specifically because without watching the trailer, people assumed the game was something else, and it's really not. But the cool part is it does come with a Life is Strange Remastered collection, which brings Life is Strange 1 and Before the Storm, which I personally like Life is Strange 2 a lot more than those, just because they speak to me as who I am. I mean, they're two Hispanic kids, and obviously that spoke to me more than the characters in Life is Strange. But Life is Strange True Colors looks really fun. Me and my wife like to play this. Well, I do the playing, she does the decision making. So I showed her the trailer. It looks really cool. I like the concept because there's always a twist. You know, in Life is Strange 1, we knew we should have the rewind powers, and in Life is Strange 2, he could move things and things like that. So this one has more of a the True Colors aspect is feeling, you know, seeing the feelings and stuff like that. So it's an interesting concept. One thing I keep digging for, and I don't know if you have the answer to this because I couldn't see it. Life is Strange is always released episodic. I think True Colors, it looks like it's being released in one chunk.
Yeah, that's correct. This one's not episodic from everything they've communicated so far.
All right, because I looked at the PSN last night and I saw it and $60, and I'm like, whoa, $60, and they're like, but it doesn't say episode 1, part 1, or anything like that. So which is, you know, glad, and you can get a whole bundle that brings Life is Strange Remastered collection. So this is cool. I enjoy this franchise. I'm gonna be curious how this goes with the new developers and stuff like that. But what was your reactions to this?
Yeah, I mean, I like what I saw. I'm very curious to see how it plays out with them shifting teams. That always makes me a little bit nervous, but it's not always for the worst. Definitely in terms of its general aesthetic, seems like it's more of a successor to that first Life is Strange than the second one, exactly. Obviously. So it makes sense why, you know, they're attaching it a little bit to the remaster Before the Storm in the first one. I'm very familiar with the first and Before the Storm. I played those before. I played the first one actually twice. I have never touched Life is Strange 2. So this one, when I saw this, I was like, okay, so this is definitely what I know from Life is Strange. Though I know that they departed a little bit in terms of some of the narrative choices that they're making with the second one. Not mad at it. I like what I see. I'm not mad at the character design. The general aesthetic of these games I think is really, really nice and has that kind of cool artsy indie vibe to it that I really, really rock with. I love the soundtrack for them as well. So I'm down with this. So far right now, I see no reason why I probably wouldn't jump into it. I'm glad that it's not episodic. That's never been like a deal breaker for me in the past. I have played through episodic games before, specifically like the Telltale games back in the day. I used to wait for The Walking Dead, and that comes out. But it's and same thing with like Batman, for example. But it's kind of a slippery slope because, you know, I'm playing it over a longer period of time, and I feel like sometimes, depending on the story, I probably would have sat there and beat it, you know, front to back and kind of one go like that, as opposed to having to return to it because you fall out. Then next thing you know, you have like 4 out of the 6 episodes worth of story, and you never completed it. And I definitely have been in that situation with a couple Telltale games in the past because of the episodic structure. So I'm glad to be able to have that full package in my control finally with the Life is Strange franchise. And I'm curious to see how it goes and how people receive it once it's fully out and people get their hands on it, because it's one of those franchises that I think is really, really good, but has never, I feel like the first one probably got the closest, but it's never really broken through all the way. And I think it's probably a combination of just the story that they're telling and that very kind of indie vibe to it, and the combination between that gameplay style, which is just not for everybody. Even a game like Detroit, as big as that was, I mean, there was it was a first-party Sony game, and there's still tons of players who never really touched it because they're not really into that kind of interactive novel type gameplay style. So I'm curious to see if this one does anything for the franchise in terms of bringing it back to the forefront of conversation like that first one did, because unfortunately the second one went super underrated and under the radar. Tell Me Why, though not part of this franchise, I definitely kind of group it in with that because of Don't Nod's heritage, and that one went super under the radar too. So it seems like these games, unfortunately, though get great critical reception, don't really break through the mainstream, and I'm hoping that this franchise can finally make a little bit of moves there, because I think it deserves it, because I've liked all the stories. I've dabbled with Tell Me Why also as well, and I thought it was really good too. So I'm not mad at it at all.
Yeah, and me and my wife are actually in the middle of telling me why we haven't played it in a while. But it, I always said, I'm like, why? I wonder why they didn't call this Life is Strange, and I knew that Square didn't, have it with them. I did not know that they were moving to a whole new developer, so I wonder what's going on there. But if there is a game you're gonna switch companies or at least developers for, this seems like it'll be okay, just because the style of the game, makes sense. So next we have the Tomb Raider Definitive Survivor Trilogy. This is the three most recent Tomb Raider games being re-released, sort of. Not too much work is going into it from what I see. I know they really talked about it. They were calling them modern classics and stuff like that. I played the first two. I beat the first one. I played a little bit of the second one. I never really got too far into it because it was kind of more of the same without enough story for me. That's cool that they're kind of redoing this. I thought there's been some rumors that they've been working on a fourth one, and I guess that may or may not be true. The way they talked about this kind of being it. They're calling it a trilogy, like this is it kind of. So I'm curious what that is. I'm not in the mood to jump into these games right now, especially since there's not too much brought up with them. And from what I saw, it's just like kind of repackaging. Not too much really refocused or lots of next gen patches and stuff like that. So that's cool for it's nice that when I go decide to play this trilogy again, that I'll at least be able to probably just snag it, pretty cheaply and on a nice one package. Any thoughts on the Tomb Raider?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I love this trilogy, admittedly. I have all three of them, so this trilogy's re-release is probably not going to be for me. But yeah, no, I love all three of these games, so I'm happy to see it get some love. I feel like this is another franchise that, because of its similarities to Uncharted, obviously, and just kind of the cultural zeitgeist moving away from Tomb Raider, these kind of went under the radar too. I thought that first one was amazing. 2 definitely kept in line with that, and 3 I really enjoyed the introduction of like a more guerrilla dark style gameplay for Tomb Raider that was very different. And obviously it still has like the climbing and navigation and puzzle solving, but there was kind of like a grittiness to the third one that I wished more people experienced, because I had a good time with it. So hopefully this trilogy opens up more people to be able to give a shot to these games and kind of see them for what they are, kind of front to back. But for me, I don't see myself buying this trilogy unless they put in a concerted effort to give me an experience I haven't had before. I have all 3 of these games. I have them all digitally too, so I can play them on my PS5 anytime I want. And yeah, so if they have proper next gen, like, hey, you can play all 3 in the game 60 frames per second, maybe the third one 4K and 60, then yeah, maybe it's been enough time, I might jump back in, but it's unlikely for me to give it a shot, because again, I experienced it, and I played Shadow of the Tomb Raider maybe like a year and a half ago or something like that again, so it hasn't been that long for me. So I'm probably gonna pass on this one, but I'm cool with it, and I like these games quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm looking really quickly on the PSN, and they seem to just be. So you can buy them all for $50 or each for $20. So you do save $10, I guess, if you do it that way.
Okay.
It's weird. I don't know. It's weird the way they have it on here. But then I do remember that the second and the third one were PS Plus games.
Yes, they were.
So I'm like, oh, no, I probably definitely, because everything on the market says that it's a PS4 game. So it's like, oh, I just would rather download them again.
As much as I would like to support. Have been at one point.
Yeah, I can't remember if the first one ever was. I don't even know if I own the first one still physically, but it's those games are always on sale and cheap and stuff. So it's, I guess, repackaging just to kind of get that hype up again.
Yeah, if someone hasn't played them before, $50 for the 3 games, I don't think is the worst price proposition. So maybe give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, some of the other stuff. Some mobile information, because Square does have always a foot in their mobile realm. So we have Just Cause Mobile, which, I mean, it looks like Just Cause on mobile devices. So that's weird, because I don't know too much about Just Cause. Like, I know what it is. I've seen it. I've seen a lot of gameplays of it. I tried it out once. It was, one of them was a PS Plus game, so I tried it when that came out. And Open World Madness really is what it is. So that's fun for that community that's there. Did you have any reactions to this?
No, I mean, not really. I've tried Just Cause multiple times with the second and the third one. I've played them multiple times and I just can't get into them. It's just not for me. I do like open world games. I like messing around in open worlds. I like the little glide mechanic and the hook shots, and I think they have a nice little thing there, but it's just really it just feels a little bit like dude bro explosion. Like, it's just the world's not that exploratory. It's just not really what I look for in an open world game, or even an open world action game like the Far Cry's and stuff like that. It's just not for me. So I definitely, introducing the mobile component doesn't do anything for me. So I'm good on this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks cool because it's like a top-down style of it, so it kind of looks like a top-down shooter. And they're boasting, the way they're talking about it, they're saying, single-player content, multiplayer co-op, and PvP stuff. So I was like, okay, I mean, it may be there. It is free to play, and that's the first thing that I see every time I see free to play. It's microtransactions up the wazoo. So it's just, how far can I play this quote-unquote single-player? How much single player content does it actually even mean? What does that mean? Does it mean necessarily a campaign or anything? But I mean, it's there for the community. They stick by Square Enix. I never hear people talking about Just Cause, but they keep making it. So someone out there, someone's playing it and they're loving it. For the next one, Project Hitman Sniper Assassins. So the team that brought us, obviously, the other mobile games that they've done, which was Hitman Go and Lara Croft Go. And I think they did a Hitman Sniper, if I remember. They did do this sort of a sequel to that. But a new Hitman mobile game was announced, but it's not including Agent 47 as of right now. Let's see. We learned that the Project Hitman Sniper Assassins is a mobile game that has you controlling not a single agent, but what seems to be a team of assassins told to work together on their mission, referred to only as 426. So, interesting concept. I appreciate what Hitman Go and Lara Croft Go did. They're not really my style of games. Just everything about it just really wasn't something that called out to me. But I do hear people constantly talk about that trilogy of games and stuff like that, so it's like I understand why they're making more. These games usually are not like a free-to-play type deal, so I'm excited to see exactly how that works. I don't think they announced specifically if it was or not, but I'm interested because I do know there's a community that's there. I mean, you don't just do 3 Go games, practically 3 Go games. I know Hitman Sniper was a little bit different, and then could go for a 4th when no one's playing them. So someone really is, and that's cool. I think it's a cool concept. I kind of wish they would have brought this to life in another form, a little bit more enticing for me. But anything to say on Project Hitman?
Yeah, well, I would say probably the most interesting thing about it is just seeing that name, Hitman, coming out of Square. Obviously, they sold the IP back to IO some time ago, a couple years back now at this point. And IO has gone ahead and completed their trilogy, and it's phenomenal. I love those games. I know you love those games. So seeing like Hitman coming out of Square, I'm like, okay, so is there any connection to the proper Hitman trilogy? If so, what integration is there? But it seems like it's fairly detached from it, and so it's probably not something I'm gonna dive into, because again, I'm willing to consume anything Hitman, but right now it has to be proper Hitman from IO. So if they're not really attached to it and it's really just kind of in the name and the light concept and the gameplay style is gonna be completely different, then I'm probably gonna pass on it.
Yeah, makes sense. That it's funny, I did not even put 2 together. I'm like, well, yeah, they must have talked to IO, because IO owns that IP from my understanding. So
yeah, they own the proper Hitman IP, so I would imagine either this is just kind of a coincidence and it's like, oh, it's not called Hitman, it's called Project Hitman or something like that. Yeah. But I would still feel like that would be proper infringement. So they probably worked out some kind of deal where maybe they can use it. So it's because of its proximity to the Hitman Go game, not so much the dedicated Hitman trilogy. So that's my guess. But again, I don't know how these business things work behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. And the last big one we got from this Square Enix Montreal announced an AR Space Invaders mobile game. Now, I thought the trailer was really cool. The trailer looked very much like a sort of not a history, but like an appreciation celebration of Space Invaders. I wish we would have seen something that I would have been excited to see. There's just not really much. There's to subscribe and win a chance to be in the playtesting and stuff like that. I don't really know what this is. I mean, it's like an AR game, so it's obviously going to use your mobile device and sort of in reality type deal. It's a cool concept from what I can assume it is. I just don't know what this actually looks like. But at least it's something cool. That's a cool. I would have never guessed this coming from them at the moment. But I liked the trailer. I watched it a few times. I thought it was an interesting idea, if done right, in my opinion. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much feel the same way. I'm quite the retro fan, so I hear Space Invaders. I mean, I grew up on that. I ain't mad at it, but yeah, I mean, the AR thing's just. I think there's absolutely a market for that. Obviously, one of the biggest phone games ever, Pokemon Go AR game. So I don't think it's a terrible idea. I could see it having some kind of novelty, especially within maybe the retro community or whatever, where it's like, hey, everybody has a phone. If you grew up on Space Invaders, look up towards the sky, you can shoot aliens. That sounds fun enough. Beyond that, I mean, it seems more of like a novelty thing. I don't see myself putting hours into this, but as a retro fan, any kind of attachment to that era, I can respect. I didn't even realize that. I don't know who owns the IP of Space Invaders, because things from those times, it was a long time ago. So it coming out of Square, I'm like, okay, why not? I don't know who else would make this game. So yeah, I'd probably 100% give it a spin, but and report back what I think. But as of right now, I mean, I don't see myself spending more than 20 minutes with it or anything like that.
Yeah, and so that was it for the Square conference, and some interesting stuff, some stuff that I'm liked. I think the conference was slightly long, but at least I kind of glad they kind of have their stuff there, compact and stuff like that, and hopefully we don't hear too much about this stuff until it's closer to release and stuff like. I know the mobile games, I won't ever probably hear the Space Invaders thing. I'm with you. I'll probably try it when it's out, and then immediately delete it off my phone.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, Square conference, good for them. I'm happy for them. They do have the kind of old school bloat to it, so they're probably gonna have to trim it down a little bit. Again, that Nintendo Direct format, it's one of those things. I'm telling everybody who has a format or a presentation, steal the format. Cut it down. They got it. That's the format you want. That in and out 15, 20 minutes. It's clean from game to game to game to game. Don't even give you a chance to breathe. That's the way you want it. Get the guy speaking in the middle of it, being like, so this is our vision, and we spent the last 20 years looking at it. Listen, man, hey, God bless you. Get off the screen. Show me the next game. Like, that was awesome in, like, 2011. I don't want to do that anymore. So that's the only thing I say, cut the bloat down. But I'm not mad at it for a first conference. They had some good stuff. They had some mid stuff. But, again, just because everything's not for us doesn't mean that it's not for anybody. So I look forward to seeing their next conference, and hopefully they got a little bit more announcements for us. And obviously, everybody's like, "Oh, where's that Final Fantasy?"
Fantasy,
that's the big thing. But something tells me Sony's gonna have to do with
Sony's,
that.
Yeah.
Just that the sheer size of that, and I know for a fact Sony is gonna market that as a proper, not like an exclusive, pretty much. So they're gonna give them the first party treatment on that. There's no doubt about that for 16. I still can't believe that they secured Final Fantasy 16 as an exclusive in 2021 again. Because again, that's going back to old school days. That's how it used to be. So, and then things seemed, if anything, was like opening up. All the Final Fantasy games are on Xbox now, and everybody's kind of playing it. And Nintendo's got the old ones now. And keep in mind, they lost them back then. So to kind of regain, 7, 8, 9, that's awesome for them. And 10, but fast forward to now, it seems like they're clamping down on that 16. So I'm curious to see. I'm not even going to say like how many people jump to Sony, because to be honest, if you play JRPGs, you probably already have a Sony console, to be honest. So
it's the place to be.
Yeah, big news for Square coming forward though. So I guess we can move on to the next story, and this is an interesting one. We hear a lot about this name, so I just wanted to get a quick topic to kind of discuss her place in the game industry right now. So industry veteran Jade Raymond is heading up a new studio that will create original games for PlayStation. Raymond announced the news today via the PlayStation blog. We want to create worlds where players can escape, have fun, express themselves, and find community. Raymond wrote about the new studio Haven. We want to pour our passion into a project. We want to make something wondrous for people to experience. So as they mentioned, the team will be called Haven, and it's going to be based out of Montreal. So she's really interesting for you guys who maybe don't pay the most attention to every single story, this is a name that we've seen actually mostly attached to Stadia in probably the last few months. Mm-hmm. And obviously Stadia fired everybody and their mom the past few months. So she was no longer employed there. But she does have quite a track record, and people throw her names around. So I pulled up some of the things that she was attached to give you guys kind of a vision of what we're dealing with here. So she worked with Ubisoft predominantly, Ubisoft Montreal, executive producer, or managing director for Far Cry 4. We got Assassin's Creed Unity, Watch Dogs 1 as executive producer, Splinter Cell Blacklist, Assassin's Creed 2, Bloodlines, the first one as producer, MGS 4 as a managing director, and then if you go back all the way to 2002, you got Sims with producer. So she has a very interesting pedigree, but the last, I would say, major thing she was attached to was probably Far Cry 4, and that's back in 2014. So it's been over 7 years since we've seen her take a proper, like, forefront role in a major AAA game. So it's very interesting seeing her kind of shuffle around here. And I'm hopefully this Haven thing actually releases something, because I don't think she published anything on Stadia. She didn't get the chance to, or at least nothing that really grabbed any headlines. So I just wanted to mention this, seeing basically a new team attached for PlayStation. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it was super interesting. When this information came out, the blog post, and I was like, wow, that name sounds familiar. And then I was like, let me go look at her track record. I'm like, okay, she's got some pretty big experience, producing in the Assassin's Creed games, executive producer, managing director in MGS and all that kind of stuff. So, but then I remember, I'm like, oh, I was like, wasn't she like VP of Google Stadia or something like that?
Yeah.
And she was. She also did work with Amy Hennig in the Star Wars game that never got released and stuff like that. So that's why there's such a big gap. She's just been, unfortunately, just kind of going from dead project to dead project. But that's, I mean, like that Amy was Hennig. Yeah, kind of like Amy Hennig. So that's more of EA's bad moves and all the way they've been working on that. Then she did in 2018. She joined Google Stadia VP, and we all know what happened to Google Stadia. And I remember her leaving that was only last month, I think, right? It was February this year where she was
very recent
leaving, and that's because they were also shuttering everyone out. And then for her to already have a independent studio sort of second party relationship with Sony is the way I look at it. She's not, everyone thought she was first party. She's definitely more of a Kojima sort of relationship, obviously not to that pedigree, but that's how it works, because she's working on original IP for PlayStation. So it's interesting. I'm glad she's got her footing. Sony isn't just working with studios and opening studios in just left and right. They're actually doing reverse. They're really picking on purchasing stuff. So they must see something there. Whatever she brought to the board must have been hand in hand ready to go with, because Sony's just not going to give you money for no reason. So I'm excited to see that. I'm hoping she gets her platform. My bad, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, when I read this story, basically same thoughts as you. The only thing that kind of registered in my head is, finally, stability. You got a brand new team. It's all yours. You could do whatever you want. And they're attached to PlayStation, which is finally some degree of stability. Because, I mean, not to be mean, but everybody knew that Stadia thing was going to fall apart. It was just the only real debate. I don't think anybody was debating whether Stadia was going to be a massive success. It was a matter of how long they stick around and how long Google operates before they shutter it like they shutter everything else. That was, I think, the main debate for it. And, lo and behold, things played out pretty much exactly how everybody expected it to. So finally, for her to find a home at PlayStation, that's a good thing. However, that doesn't come. It comes with concessions in the way that you have to be results oriented and you have to produce, and that's one thing. And not that I'm putting it on her, but obviously she hasn't produced anything in quite a bit of time, and I don't necessarily put that on her. It takes a lot to make up games. You can't just sit there and make it yourself. I mean, you can, but an indie game. Yeah. So it's one of those things where Sony also has shown that if you don't put out things and you're costing us too money, you're done. And we'll close you in a heartbeat. And so as soon as you popped up, it will be as soon as you go. And so that's the important thing, whereas she'll have access to the budgets, she'll have the sense of stability, but you have to produce right now, and you have to produce at a high level too. Because, I mean, you look at teams that Sony's shuttered in the past, and I mean, these guys had some major IPs attached to them. So that there's not necessarily pros and cons, but there's a massive responsibility that comes with attaching yourself to the PlayStation name, because their first-party suite of teams have such a high pedigree and high level of standards that they have, especially now in this fresh PS5 era where everybody's trying to put their best foot forward. You got to be ready to deliver. So I'm excited to see the scale of what she can produce, and that'll, I feel like, help with our placement of her, because again, this is very ambiguous right now. You got this brand new team, Haven. She has attachment to major AAA games in the past, but is that what she's interested in producing right now? It's unclear. Mm-hmm. So I'm not necessarily expecting them to come out of the gate with some massive Horizon level type game, despite her track record in the past. But I'm curious to see if this is going to be more of like a smaller team, put out maybe 2 titles a year and then scale their way up and maybe make the bend switch to major IP or major AAA games once they get a little bit more comfortable, or is this something that they're looking at them as like a mid-sized team and they're going to keep them as a mid-sized team? So time will tell with them, but I do have my eyes on them, especially with the fact that first party and Sony are such an interesting system that they got going, because obviously Microsoft is in the acquisition stage, but Sony has been pretty solidified for quite a while, and they don't just bring on new people all the time. So any additions or any shutterings is like a big deal. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, and hopefully it adds a little bit more diversity into the style of games. Everyone Absolutely. Does like to come at us for, not us, but at Sony for, just third-person action games. All right, so the next story, something I didn't expect to hear, because we got a blog post not too long about the PSVR 2, and I thought it would be a long time before we had anything, but they're showing us the controls already. So Sony has announced the next edition of the PlayStation VR headset that is being developed for PlayStation 5. The headset is described as our generation VR system that will deliver the ultimate entertainment experience, according to PlayStation's Hideki Nishino. Said the VR system will provide dramatic leaps in performance and interactivity. He explained players will feel an even greater sense of presence and become even more immersed in their game worlds once they put on the new headset. He went on to say that PlayStation engineers are taking the learnings from the existing model of PSVR and using that feedback to inform where to go with the new one. Very little in the way of specifics is known about the headset, and there has been no images or anything or even stuff like that, but the new PSVR headset for PS5 will also use a new VR controller that makes use of some of the key features in the DualSense controller for PS5, along with a focus on great ergonomics. So no more using technology from 2010 or whatever it was. So no more glowing orbs. The PlayStation Move is finally going to be put to rest, and I'm glad. The controls look very weird. They do look more in line with the VR. Like if you saw these controls anywhere else, you would probably assume that it's VR.
Reminds me of the Vive controllers.
Yeah, it reminds a lot of the Vive controls. The whole ergonomic thing. I do like how, I think, from my understanding, too, they have the dual sticks on both. It'll have the DualSense triggers in them, and the tracking, I guess, is, don't know exactly how the tracking is going to work, but that technology does exist in other VR headsets, so there is no need for some giant orb or light or anything like that. And we knew that was coming because the DualSense doesn't really have any, so it's nice to see that. I think the controls look great. I did not expect this slow, steady, constant news for PSVR, so I'm excited. It looks like they actually are going to take leaps and bounds going forward. The PS5 is not going to be like a small, interstitial upgrade, but it looked like a full sequel in a sense for this hardware. A lot of technology going to those controllers, so I don't know what price ranges are already starting to scare me a little bit, because these controls, adding the triggers makes sense. Obviously, why would you not? Especially if you're thinking crossbow games and stuff like that, it's gonna be perfect for that kind of stuff. But it's exciting to see. It's exciting to see this new generation. I did not expect it. Someone sent me the picture, and I'm like, "What is this?" And they're like, "They showed the VR2 controls." And I'm like, "Those are not what I expected. I expected a cheap sort of remake of the Move controls," which luckily that's not the case anymore. So what did you think? I know you're interested in VR, but not necessarily a adopter.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a reluctant participant because I'm just not able to physically do VR, unfortunately. So I'm kind of an outside observer. But yeah, no, I'm happy to see what they've shown off so far. It's very interesting, the tack that they've taken, or the strategy that they've taken by going kind of controller first is very interesting for me. But it does also kind of remind me of the PS5, because I believe we saw the DualSense first too. So that screams to me that they're very interested in the tech of what that user feel is, because the DualSense came out and it has that kind of, not HD rumble because I know that's the Joy-Con thing, but those very specific brand new haptics and all that feedback on the controllers. And so you know without a doubt that technology is going to be integrated into these new VR controllers. And so it's very interesting seeing those kind of controllers first, which tells me that there's probably going to be quite a bit of tech integration into there. And then I was kind of just, as you were reading all this off, my wheels were spinning a little bit. I'm like, yeah, that if you think of how immersive those haptics are in the regular DualSense, and imagine if you're already playing VR, which is in and of itself more immersive, you're reaching for things, you're grabbing things. What if you go to grab things and you actually feel that resistance, you feel like you grab that gun, you feel that texture, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like this is going to be, for some people, this is really going to sell them on that rumble tech that Sony introduced on the DualSense. With that, if it's done right, obviously your mileage may vary on your VR experience, but there's some people who have done a really, really great job with it, and I'm curious to see how all this tech is kind of integrated into one another. And the controllers themselves, though they look really weird, I feel like it's definitely in line with what the modern kind of VR hand experiences in terms of controllers go. It's obviously way different than the Move controller, but obviously the Move controller was meant to be a completely different thing and kind of got brought into the VR thing, which was always nuts to me. The fact that, all these years later, they're still using the Move, that really surprised me, especially with how peripheral heavy a lot of these game companies tend to be, where it's like if there's an opportunity to sell you on a new thing, they're going to try. And the fact that they stuck with the Move instead of kind of bringing that in the 21st century a little bit more, it surprised me. So yeah, I'm glad to see everything get a proper update and a brand new headset. And it just makes me more excited to see how this headset looks and see what very obvious fixes that they made in terms of just the general form factor of it, the cable management. I just want to see this full package when it's all said and done to properly get a better gauge of how many leaps and bounds ahead is this from the first PSVR, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because, PlayStation is sticking with VR and stuff like that, and maybe we'll start seeing things like Half-Life Alyx come over. Hopefully. That needed a little bit more diversity in the triggers, and not the triggers, but in the headset and the handsets as well. So we'll have to see, because they're sticking by this. They're sticking by the VR, so which I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, I respect it, because I wasn't always convinced. Not so much in the technology, but that the idea of just PlayStation really sticking by it. Because it's a tough sell, and all these years later, I mean, just statistically, a majority of Sony gamers haven't adopted it. But they found a way to make it work, and they found their dedicated fan base of it. So, I mean, I respect the hell out of it, the fact that they stuck by it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the number one selling VR headset, so.
100%. So speaking of VR, I guess we could segue into the next one. And this was one that I saw a lot of headlines about. And so we did get final confirmation about it, but it kind of launches us into a more interesting conversation after the fact. So this is about basically Xbox in VR. So a Microsoft spokesperson has told IGN that VR is not coming to the Xbox Series X and S at this time, after it was reported the Xbox console referred to a VR peripheral when you plug something in. So IGN Italy reported that while testing the new Xbox wireless headset, a prompt appeared on the Xbox Series X system saying that their VR headset needs an update. This suggests the Xbox Series X supports VR peripherals in some capacity. However, a Microsoft spokesperson said this is not the case. In a statement to IGN, the company says the copy in this error message is inaccurate due to a localization bug. VR for console is not a focus for us at this time. So basically, there was a lot of rumors that it's like, oh, is Xbox getting ready to set up VR? They're like, hell no, at least not for right now. The whole classic, we have nothing to announce at this moment. But it kind of launches us into a more interesting conversation, which is PlayStation seeing relative success with their headset. There's obviously the Oculus out there. There's obviously the HTC Vive. But Xbox has taken a very passive approach to it, and it's kind of been hands-off. And Microsoft has tangential connections with it, but Xbox themselves has not had that full integration. So my question to you is, do you think Xbox should dip their toes into a proper dedicated VR headset? And if so, what do you think that looks like?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this for a while. Microsoft being, this huge company with big money, I thought they would have maybe struck a deal with Oculus or one of these other companies and then worked that way. They're very it's weird. Xbox likes to take chances. They did the Kinect thing that didn't really work out, and I think that's probably what's their fear. They see that other people are, oh, this is working for other people, but if they start doing, that's a lot of manufacturer technology. It's got to be on par. Now you're entering. Not only are you in the middle of reviving your system, pretty successfully, I would say. Now you have to try to compete with not only your biggest competition, which is obviously Sony, but now you got to compete with all these small ones and people who are just strapping their phone to their head, and that's good enough for VR. It's just a very weird concept. That's why I always thought they would partner with someone, or them and Oculus would get, or Oculus is owned by Facebook now. I'm like, somebody is gonna sweeten the pot that they can just make it work. But we have heard multiple times that they said no. I just don't know what VR headset looks like for Microsoft.
Okay.
I don't see Gears of War VR being a thing. I don't see Halo VR would probably be kind of cool, but the fast twitchiness of that game is not going to translate that well, at least in my opinion, to a VR headset. It sounds like motion sickness the game, for sure. But it is interesting. I don't doubt at all that there is a prototype, that they definitely tried this out somehow, at least in one way or another. Whether they do release this whole weird sort of like the series system saying that the VR needed an update and stuff, that caught me off guard when you sent me this link, and I was like, what? I'm like, because it's quick for them to be like, no, it's a localization error. No, there's nothing at this time. And then next year they're like, oh yeah, here it is. But because Microsoft's kind of been that way, it's interesting. I just think, I don't know. I in a world that I get PSVR 2, which is pretty likely depending where I'm at in my life, I just don't know if I could double down and get. You have to assume these VR systems are going to be $400. I can't spend another $800 for not necessarily a gimmick, but for something that I will do once a month. Yeah. And I think maybe that might be Xbox's thinking for that aspect.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I have zero doubt that they've dabbled with it. I think it's much more likely that they partner with one of the existing VR companies way before that they release their own dedicated VR headset. So I see them, teaming up with HTC Vive and saying like, hey, Game Pass VR, you can. Mm-hmm. There's like some degree of compatibility with our consoles. So a headset that's like the Xbox VR, I don't necessarily see that happening. It could. I don't think they should, personally. And one reason for that is if you think of all the major, some of the best VR experiences coming out of that scene right now, so much of the VR headsets are reliant on exclusives for that headset. A reason to come here instead of going there. So I'm thinking Astrobots, I'm thinking Half-Life Alyx, which have their own degree of exclusivity in their respective platforms. And Xbox, I think, already has enough problems giving people a reason to come to their regular console, let alone introducing a situation where they have another piece of hardware that they, put blood, sweat, and tears into making working, and then they don't have any software to, push people to go in that direction. So that's my issue with it, is that they can't get a Halo on an Xbox right now. So you're talking about a Halo on a VR headset. I don't know. I'm not sold on it. And I think Xbox is... I don't want Xbox to necessarily bite off more than they can chew. So they had the exclusivity issue. They brought in a lot of teams. They bought, half the games industry at this point. And so slowly, hopefully, they start, bringing out some first-party IP stuff, which can, in turn, hopefully help boost console sales. And then from that point onwards, I think they can explore, alternate strategies. But I feel like they need to properly address some of the issues their main console selling peripherals have in general. Solve those problems first, and then introduce the VR headset, then introduce whatever kind of weird handout thing you want to do, or what, you know what I mean? So I just feel like I don't want them to introduce more problems without addressing the ones that they already have, because again, you're trying to sell people a VR headset, which is, I don't feel like anyone's quite mastered yet. You got Facebook involved, HTC, you got PlayStation, big major companies that 100% haven't had that mainstream adoption yet. It's a growing thing. It takes time. The tech is not 100% there yet. So I don't think Xbox should necessarily dip their foot in there quite yet, because they're having trouble selling something that Sony just cracked what, like 100 million with PS4, more than 100 million at this point. And Xbox is what, like half of that. So Xbox has a console selling issue, and they need to fix that first. And because I want to see Xbox succeed, but I feel like sometimes they bite off way more than they can chew, and I respect their attempts to do great things and push the industry forward and explore a lot of different avenues. Shout out to Phil Spencer for that. But what is taking on so many responsibilities where you don't excel at any of them? You know what I mean? So it's like it's like that master of none type situation that I don't want to necessarily see for Xbox, where it's like they do a million things but they only do like 5 of them well. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I didn't even think of it that way. It's like, let's leave 343 to release a good Halo game and not worry about Team B working on a Halo VR and stuff.
Exactly.
Like that.
Let's cross that bridge first.
Yeah, let's get these guys making good IPs first. All right. So the last story, which is one that caught me by surprise, but then I started looking back at some events that rolled out. Sony has bought EVO. So Sony has announced that it has acquired the Evolution Championship Series, better known as EVO, the world's largest fighting game tournament. Sony Interactive Entertainment and RTS, an esports venture from Endeavor, have acquired the assets and properties of the EVO series. The purchase means that future EVO events are effectively Sony PlayStation events and partnerships. EVO co-founders Tony and Tom Cannon will remain at EVO as key advisors. Sony took the opportunity to announce the 2021 release dates, which will be August 6th through 8th, and then August 13th through 15th, which is the weekends, obviously. Okay. Events will include Tekken 7, Street Fighter 5 Championship Edition, Champion Edition, I always say that, Mortal Kombat 11, and Guilty Gear Strive. And there's a lot of information that goes out and about to this. They were excited for the partnership. They are not making EVO a strict PlayStation thing. They're saying that they're open to all platforms. I think that obviously means Smash Brothers, if they can get their stuff together over there. And Nintendo has provided a statement saying that they're excited to engage, and they will continue to assess the EVO situation. The big thing that happened last year, I don't even know if we ever discussed it here or on the personal side, that the guy who organized it before, Joey Kruller, I want to say his name was, there was a lot of abuse allegations to him, and that's why they canceled 2020's online EVO thing. NetherRealm had pulled out, Capcom had pulled out, Nintendo, I think, had pulled out later on, and stuff like that. So they needed sort of this rebranding. They needed to make sure that it is not connected at all. And if they're confident enough to say that Street Fighter is going to be there, Mortal Kombat's going to be there, that means those guys are probably going to come back and have already discussed coming back, in a sense, because that means this is now a Sony PlayStation event that Xbox will be at, that Nintendo will be at, because this is the fighting event, really the only one. I know there's a few smaller ones, but this is, it's EVO. Even people who aren't in that community will keep an ear out for announcements at EVO, for character drops, balance updates, new game announcements. Whenever they want to announce Street Fighter 6, you have to assume it'll be at EVO. Like, that's the place to do any fighting game announcement. So it's interesting to see how this is going to work. Obviously, this year's is still, it's still during fighting this pandemic. It's going to be an online situation. It's all online tournaments and stuff like that, which is fine. But obviously, the fighting game community, they love to have that in-person sort of thing. Maybe next year we'll see how they can do it in a safe, safe way. I'm just curious to see how much different will it be, or is it just sort of the Sony branding will help cleanse that grossness that was going on at these fighting communities, between the Smash Brothers people and obviously all the abuse allegations. So we'll have to see about that. But this is a move I did not see coming in any way. I did not expect this. Yeah,
it's one of those things, like, obviously you're the fighting game person, so I'm kind of an outsider. I've definitely watched a lot of EVO related stuff, but admittedly I don't know every single goings on. I don't know the heritage of this conference, but I know it's a major deal. And so my first question was, what a lot of people's first question is, what does this mean for Nintendo, obviously? And I think on the short term they'll absolutely work something out, but I would not be surprised if Nintendo starts making the steps to have their own type of situation. They've done that many times before. They've had no problem saying F you to E3 and we're going to set up our own little conference. You got the Nintendo Directs now. We'll do our own event. So it doesn't surprise me. I just wonder how the Sony acquisition affects the just material experience on the ground. If that changes at all, are you going to see a heavier PlayStation focus? Sony themselves are a massive corporation that own stakes in many, many things. At one point, they had a pretty high majority stake in like Blu-ray, for example. That didn't necessarily stop other companies from being able to use Blu-rays. You're going to be paying Sony in the end, and it's on the other side whether they're willing to play ball with you. So I just wonder if the Sony owns it, but they're not going to necessarily have PS5s all over the place any more than normal. You're going to see your Xbox, you're going to see your Nintendo there, and you can do whatever you want. Because it's more of a Sony thing, and they just want like maybe that profit split, or they're going to take full advantage of this to make it PlayStation Mania. The only funny thing is that PlayStation, from at least the first party perspective, doesn't even really have any fighting game offerings. So it's one of those things where it's like you got to play ball with the other companies because you're not producing anything on your own, to be honest with you. So I doubt on the short term this is going to impact it in one way or the other. Again, you mentioned a great point where having that kind of massive entity to oversight things maybe can clean things up before and kind of take it out of the hands of just the regular folk and make sure that a big company is there to make sure everything is above board. But I wouldn't be surprised if long term Nintendo doesn't want to play ball with them at all. I wouldn't be surprised, because in the past we've seen situations where when somebody's getting a little bit too much profit split and they're not cool with it, they pull out really fast. That's happened before. We know Sony and Nintendo don't get along the best. That stemming back from the 90s, obviously, and things have obviously gotten a little bit better since then. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in like a couple years. So Nintendo offers or announces some major, thrown properly by Nintendo, fighting game competition, all things Nintendo. They're going to have ARMS there, and they're going to invite Square to come over. And people are going to play ball with Nintendo. So I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see some major competition coming from Nintendo within a couple years. But that's just a guess on my end. I'm not part of the fighting game community. What I do know is Nintendo. I know their past, I know their heritage, and I know their culture. And I know they can be petty like that. And they have no problem providing some degree of competition, and that name means something. And so when they go up to Square and Bandai Namco and it's like, hey, you want to do something for our conference? You best believe that they're going to be there in some degree. I'm not saying they're going to skip out EVO, but they're going to throw some resources that way. So competition's on the way, in my opinion. That's just my guess.
No, and it makes sense. Like, their exact quote is very dodgy. Like, they answered it by not answering. It says, Nintendo has enjoyed engaging with fans at past EVO tournaments and wish the show organizers the best with their new venture. We will continue to assess EVO and other opportunities. Assess EVO. That means we're going to think about it. We'll see what happens, basically, which means, like, let's see what deals we can do in the background, see how we can get paid, and if it's not going to do it, then we'll be like, thank you so much for the time at EVO. We value our fans so much, and we have excitement news for the summer. Watch, I see the statement already. Yep. And then they say it themselves, and other opportunities as we plan for the future online and offline Super Smash Bros. Tournament activity.
They are gone.
That says it. That it may not be now, but especially when people can start gathering and stuff like that, and that vaccine's out there clearing everyone up, I think then you'll start seeing something. I don't know where they would partner this or what they would exactly do. Are they going to host a fighting game tournament across the street from EVO? They do that weird stuff. So
they're petty, man. I'm telling you.
We'll see how that works out for them.
Yeah, because it's very interesting where Nintendo and their third party, like their willingness to work with third parties, is very touch and go, and a lot of it I feel like comes to like who is monetizing this, and if it's competition monetizing it, they're sketched out to begin with. I mean, if you go back to like the 90s with that whole Nintendo PlayStation situation, and they found out that Sony was going to be making money on it in perpetuity because they own the disc-based technology, and they were like, hell no, and they pulled out super quick. And so it's stuff like that. And I know a lot of people would argue like, hey, that was the 90s, the people are different now, and so it's like the funny thing is, if you pay enough attention to Nintendo and you understand who they are at a cultural level, not that much has changed. And so I would put money down that they're getting the hell out of there by next year. I bet.
Yeah, probably. It's very likely.
So get ready for the Nintendo Fighting Game Conference, whatever they call it.
Yeah, as long as they monitor who they get there.
Yeah, we're going to have ARMS competitions. Are you guys ready for ARMS 2?
ARMS 2.
But yeah, that was episode 48. We didn't do a loose topic this time because obviously we had 5 major, pretty large stories, and I didn't want to keep you guys here for too long. But hope you guys enjoyed the show. I'm Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.